All right, let's jump right in. If you've ever looked out at your backyard and thought, there's some real potential here, well, you are definitely not alone. We're going to break down the single most important first step to building a garden suite, a step that could literally save you thousands of dollars and a whole lot of headaches down the road. So, is this something you've been kicking around, maybe for some extra rental income or a place for the in-laws, or maybe even that dream home office you've always wanted? It's a huge project, for sure, but with some pretty amazing potential.
And listen, if you are thinking about it, you are absolutely part of a huge wave right now. This is one of the fastest growing trends in home improvement, and it's totally transforming backyards all across the province.
But whoa, hang on a second. Before you go falling down a Pinterest rabbit hole looking at cool floor plans and clever storage hacks, there's like this gatekeeper to the whole process. One simple word that really determines everything.
And that's it. Zoning. I know, it's not the sexiest part of the project, but trust me, it is without a doubt the most important. It's the thing that decides if you can build, where you can build, and how big you can build. If you get this part right, everything else just falls into place.
So why is this such a big deal all of a sudden? What's really driving this backyard home boom? Let's take a look.
First things first, what exactly are we talking about here? A garden suite, you might also hear it called a coach house, is a totally separate, self-contained little home right on your property. We're not talking about a fancy shed. This is a full-on living space with its own kitchen, bathroom, the whole shebang.
This whole thing really became possible back in 2022 thanks to some provincial legislation. The idea was to create something called gentle density, basically adding more housing options into neighborhoods we already love, but without, completely changing how they look and feel.
All right, let's get into the nitty-gritty for Toronto. Think of these next few rules as the absolute blueprint for your project. If you can check all these boxes, you're in really good shape.
So, the first big question you have to ask is, can you even build one on your property? And it all comes down to your property's specific zoning code. That's the city's official label for your land that says what you can and can't do with it. Okay, so if your home is in one of these residential zones, that's R, RD, RS, RT, or RM, then you're probably in the clear. Now, it's super important to know that this usually applies to detached or semi-detached homes. Condos and most townhouses, they typically don't qualify.
Next up, we've got to talk about something called setbacks. It sounds technical, but all it really means is the empty space you're required to leave between your new little house, your fences, and your main house. It's like a mandatory buffer zone.
And here are the key numbers you need to know for Toronto. You need 5 meters from your back fence, 1.5 meters from the side fences, and another 5 meters of space between it and your main house. You can see right away how these numbers are going to start dictating the actual size and shape of what you can build.
All right, let's move on to the next big rule, height. How tall can you actually make this thing?
The magic number here is 6 meters. To put that in perspective, that's roughly the height of a 2-story building. So that gives you a lot of cool design flexibility. You could easily do a loft or something like that.
Okay, so you know where it can go, you know how high it can be, but how big can the footprint be? The city's got a rule for that too, just to make sure you're not paving over your entire backyard.
And here's the number. Your garden suite can take up a maximum of 40% of your backyard. So, in other words, the size of your yard is what directly limits the size of your suite's foundation.
Okay, now that we know the basic rules, let's get practical. Think of this next part as a quick reality check you can do for your very own property right now.
Here's a simple 5-step checklist to get you started. First, you can find your zoning code right on your city's website. Then, just confirm it's on that approved list we talked about. After that, literally grab a tape measure and check your yard for those setbacks. And don't forget 2 other key things. You need a clear 1-meter path for emergency access, and you have to look for any big, protected trees that might get in the way. Now, we've been focusing a lot on Toronto, but that provincial rule, Bill 23, applies everywhere in Ontario. But, and this is a big but, the specific details can change a lot from one city to the next. So let's take a quick look at how things can differ.
Yeah, this chart really tells the story, doesn't it? You can see just how local these rules get. Look at Hamilton. They let you build a little bit taller. London requires a smaller setback from the back fence. And check out the parking. Some cities, like Ottawa, actually make you add a parking spot, while Toronto and Hamilton don't. The lesson here is crystal clear. You have to check your local city's bylaws.
So, you've done your homework and it looks like your property qualifies. Awesome. What's next? Let's talk about the path from your plan to an actual permit and how to get over some of the common hurdles you might run into.
Look, pretty much every project is going to have its challenges. Maybe your yard is a bit on the small side. That might just mean you need to think about a one-story design instead of two. Got a big, beautiful, protected tree? You might just need to shift where the building goes. Path to the backyard too narrow? Maybe it's as simple as moving an AC unit. The point is, these are usually solvable problems, not total deal breakers.
So if there's one thing you take away from all of this, let it be this. If you want to build smarter, if you want to save yourself a ton of money and avoid major headaches, you absolutely have to start with zoning. It is the bedrock of a successful project, plain and simple.
You know, by understanding these rules, you're not just ticking boxes for the city, you're actually unlocking the hidden potential of your own property. So now that you know the first critical steps, the only real question left is, what could your backyard become?